Assalamualaikum and greetings. My name is Aszreeyn and I will be presenting the overview of motivational theory and its application. So first of all, we start with the motivation definition. So motivation itself is defined as a state of mind filled with energy and enthusiasm, which drives a person to work in a certain way to achieve desired goals. Motivation is a force that pushes people to work with a high level of commitment and focus, even if things going against their way. So what about motivation theory? Motivation theory is a study of understanding what drives a person to work towards a particular goals or outcome. It is relevant to all society, but it is also especially crucial to business and management. There are several types of theories of motivation. However, here I am going to explain only 5 theories of motivations, where the first one is Maslow's theory of hierarchical needs. Second theory is Hertzberg's two-factor theory, and the third theory is McClelland's theory of needs. Fourth theory, Vroom's theory of expectancy. The fifth theory is McGregor's theory X and theory Y. Starting with the first theory, which is Maslow's theory of hierarchical needs. Maslow created a pyramid to show how people are motivated and stated that one cannot ascend to the next level unless lower levels are fulfilled. Lowest level in the pyramid are basic needs. Unless lowest level are satisfied, people usually do not bother on working to the upper level needs in the pyramid that Maslow have created. So, one of the best places to start analyzing theories and models of motivation and their application in the workplace is from Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Of all the types of approaches to motivation in the workplace, this is probably the most famous theories of motivation. So Maslow's needs form a pyramid where it started with physiological at the bottom and ends with self-actualization at the top. So, what is physiological needs? Physiological needs is the basic needs of survival such as air, sleep, food, water, and shelter. The second one is safety needs, where safety needs is protection from threats, deprivation, and dangers, health, security of employment, and also housing, health. And then the third one is social needs. Social needs is need for association, affiliation, and friendship with others. These social needs, also known as love and belonging needs. And then the next one is esteem needs, also known as self-esteem or status needs. Esteem needs is the need for respect, acknowledgement, and recognition from others. And the last one is self-actualization needs, which is opportunity of personal development in a person. It is also living out of dreams and potential in themselves. It is for self-fulfillment, learning, and more. Maslow hierarchy is the most famous theories of motivation. However, there are criticisms of the theory. So the first one is there may be overlapping in need of hierarchy. And then the second one is the need priority model may not apply at all times in all places. The third one is man's behavior at any time is mostly guided by multiplicity of behavior. And then the last one is in case of some people, the level of motivational might be permanently lower. So moving on to the next theory of motivation, which is Hertzberg's two-factor theory. It is also known as Hertzberg's motivation hygiene theory, which uses different categories than Maslow's hierarchy of needs and is less concerned with an employee's life outside of work. The theory still addresses intrinsic needs before extrinsic needs. So, after analyzing all the theories and models of motivation and their application in the workplace, the pattern is actually repeatedly the same. So what is Hertzberg's two-factor theory? So the first factor is hygiene factor, which hygiene factors needed to ensure an employee does not become dissatisfied where they do not lead to higher levels of motivation. But without them, there is dissatisfaction. This factor include physiological and safety needs. So the second one is motivator factors, which needed in order to motivate an employee into higher performance. These factors include social, esteem, and self-actualization needs. So these are the examples for Herzberg two-factor theory. The first one is influenced by hygiene factors, which is also known as dissatisfier, where the examples are working condition, co-worker relation, policies and rules, and supervisor quality. And then what influenced by motivator factors, which is also known as satisfiers, is achievements, recognition, responsibilities, the work itself, and also personal growth. So this is the illustration for Herzberg two-factor theory. Herzberg uses the categories of hygiene and motivation to increase motivation. This model insists that hygiene needs must be met before motivation is possible. When hygiene is addressed, job dissatisfaction decreases, and when motivation is met, job satisfaction increases. These are how things break down in this model. Hygiene, hygiene includes security, status, working condition, interpersonal relationships, supervision, company policy, and administration. And motivation includes growth, advancement, responsibility, enjoyable work, recognition, and achievement. Next, the two-factor theory has, however, drawn its share of criticism. The first one is, people generally tend to take credit of themselves when things go well. They blame failure on the external environment. The second one is, the theory basically explains job satisfaction, not motivation. The third one is, even job satisfaction is not measured on an overall basis. This theory neglects situational variable to motivational individual. Gulshan point out that it fails to distinguish between physical and psychological aspects, and to precisely explain what motivators are and how they differ from hygiene factor. It also fails to express the degrees of satisfaction and dissatisfaction as a measure instead of using numbers. Another criticism leveled against it is that it makes assumption that every individual will react in the same way in the similar situation. Moving on to the next theory of motivation, which is McClelland's human motivation theory. McClelland's human motivation theory, also known as McClelland's need theory, which this theory affirms that we all have three motivating drivers, which does not depend on our gender or age. One of these three drivers will be a dominant in our behavior. So, this theory assumes that people have one or three driving needs, depending on their life experiences. The first one is achievement. Achievement is a need to accomplish and demonstrate own competence. It is extrinsically motivated by rewards, recognition, and quick affirmation. The next one is affiliation. Affiliation is a need for love, belonging, and social acceptance. Affiliation is intrinsically motivated by a need for love, belonging, and relationship. The next one is power. Power is a need for controlling on work or the work of other. It is extrinsically motivated by power, status, and control over their own work and others' work. So McClelland's approach applying motivation theories in organization is not centered around meeting everyone's intrinsic needs before addressing extrinsic motivation. In a small business, you identify which driving needs each employee has and work with that one driving need. For example, someone with an affiliation need should be on a team with people they like and with low conflict. However, someone with an achievement need can work on a higher stress team as long as they provided quick recognition and affirmation of their efforts. Those with power needs can also thrive on a team with conflict as long as they have enough control over their own work and are put into a position of leadership where they can direct others. McClellan's need achievement theory postulates that some people are driven to success through seeking personal achievement rather than rewards themselves. This theory is readily applicable to academic environments and explains why some teachers are high achievers despite the difficulties they face. They set themselves high goals and achieving these goals is what drives them. The next theory of motivation is Vroom's theory of expectancy, where this theory says that individuals' motivation is affected by their expectations about the future. In his perspective, individuals' motivation is affected by three elements, which are expectancy, instrumentality, and valence. So the first one is expectancy, which have the belief in increase of effort will lead to increase in performance. Next one is instrumentality, which have the belief in if an individual perform well, then the results will be valuable. The third one is valence, which how much importance individual places on the expected outcome. So Vroom's application of motivation theories in organization involves addressing intrinsic and extrinsic needs simultaneously. This is done through following two beliefs, where the first one is people believe that they are likely to be successful and reach goals. The second belief is those people believe that they will be rewarded for their success. Using Vroom's approach in relatively simple for most small business owners, you might look at your company overall goals and break them down into small manageable chunks for each employee, ensuring you personalize expectations to each person. For example, you might meet with each employee to determine their strength and set achievable, customized goals, then meet with them again later to assess their progress and offer rewards or recognition. When people feel goals are achievable for them, they buy into company's culture, mission, and values. They feel that they feel that what they do makes a difference, which grants them a sense of purpose. Your consistent and reliable recognition affirms that and makes them want to continue giving their best. Vroom's expectancy theory stipulates that behavior is a product of choices that are available to be prioritized. The idea is to derive satisfaction and minimize dissatisfaction in employees. Individual factors such as personality and skills determine performance. This theory also explains that performance, motivation, and effort are within an individual's motivation, and variables as valence, instrumentality, and expectancy verifies this. The higher the effort in work relates to the higher the performance. However, there are some criticisms regarding the theory, where the first one is multiplicative and additive. The model underlying the expectancy theory states that motivation is equal to expectancy multiplied by instrumentality multiplied by valence. Under the theory, if any of the factors are zero, then the employee will be unmotivated. However, in real world, employees work hard at times even if they are not sure they'll get a reward they hope for. As such, research included in Oxford Handbook of Motivation implies that the equation should be additive. Motivation equals expectancy plus instrumentality plus valence. And then the second one is lack of values. One of the expectancy theory's greatest strength is also one of its greatest weaknesses. The theory is inherently rational, assuming that employees always act purely out of self-interest and their desire for reward. However, the theory also omits the possibility that an employee may be motivated by other factors. Many employees are motivated to do the right thing or to be team players, regardless of the reward. Because the theory doesn't account for this, it can lead to an employer missing out on an excellent motivational tool. The third one is timing issues. The expectancy theory looks at every motivational factor as a standalone event. Under the theory's worldview, employees work on a project for a certain reward, then go on the next one for the next reward. It, however, doesn't take into account an employee who does the right thing on a project or two because of desire to get promoted to meet her long-term career plan. That employee is motivated by a reward, but she's not motivated by a reward tied to a project. This makes the expectancy theory weak at predicting long-term patterns of behavior. And the last one is implementation challenges. Employees usually don't walk into their manager's office with neatly typed lists of the rewards they want, sorted in order of how bad they want them. However, the expectancy theory assumes that managers have access to employee instrumentality and balance factor without knowing exactly what employees want and how bad they want it. It becomes very hard to anticipate how motivated they will be to take on a task, even if a reward is offered. Sales contests are microcosm of this. Invariably, the prize gets a few producers excited while the rest tune the contest out and achieve limited, if any, productivity gains. This happens because in real world, managers don't always know how to motivate each member for their teams. And then another one of the major criticisms of this expectancy theory of motivation decision model was its simplicity, in the sense that it doesn't explain the different level of effort acted out by an individual. There is also the assumption that a reward will entice an employee to expend greater efforts in order to obtain the reward, but neglect the fact that the reward in question could have a negative effect for the individual. For example, a pay increase might push him or her into a higher tax bracket. Moving on to the last theories of motivation, which is McGregor's Theory X and Theory Y, which describes two types of people who are likely present in your workplace. Your motivational strategies can be tailored to one of these types, where type X is these people are lazy and focused on themselves, they benefit from top-down leadership and expectation. Examples of theory X is humans like to work as little as possible. People lack of ambition, dislike responsibility, and prefer to be directed by others. Humans are inherently self-centered and indifferent to organizational needs and goals, and people are generally gullible and not bright and sharp. Type Y or Theory Y, these peoples are self-starters who are intrinsically motivated to give their best. They benefit from a positive work environment, rewards, and recognition. Theory Y, people are not by nature passive or resistant to organizational goals. They're willing to assume responsibility. They want their organization to succeed. People are able to direct their own behavior and they desire achievements. So, theory X assumption take a negative perspective of people. Like people can have an inherently dislike for work and avoid if it is possible. Because of this, they might be coerced, controlled, directed, and threatened by punishment to make them work. They prefer to be directed, avoid responsibility, and have little ambition and want security. Theory Y assumptions take the opposite view. the mental and physical inputs expended at the workplace are equated and par with those rest or play. External factors or any threats from outside may not be able to sole influence for exerting effort. Workers or people can exercise caution and discipline to have objectives achieved, but the hunger in desire to commit to objective is dependent on how big the rewards as assigned to that kind of achievement. Applying this assumption to a school environment, one could argue that two of the main causes of dissatisfaction among teachers are having to deal with problem students and a strict and inconsiderate management. For example, a principal who is intimidating and does not appreciate the efforts of the teachers, or an overly directive principal who never delegates or allows teacher to make independent decisions. Conversely, a supportive principal may be a source of job satisfaction to teachers. For example, a small business owner. Another example is, as a small business owner, keep tabs on employee behavior and work patterns for those who would rather play on their phones than quickly serve a customer. Impose top-down expectation and consequences for those who go extra mile for customer satisfaction. Ensure they have proper support on the job and receive recognition they have earned. Many successful companies have gotten where they are through the effort of motivated employees who work with their superiors to make their tasks even more manageable. By applying the elements of goal-setting theory and setting attainable and measurable goals, companies and their employees can become more accountable and perform at a higher level. When considering what makes a successful company flourish, experts often point to bosses such as Richard Branson, the founder of Virgin Atlantic, who often is quoted as saying, "Train people well enough so they can live. Treat them well enough so they don't want to." In other words, empower your employees to be bosses themselves, and if your workplace is a good one, they will stick by you in your success. Some tips to apply this application theory in workplace is involve employees from start to finish, and objectives should be linked to individual goals. Moving on to the next subchapters, which is attitudes, perceptions, judgment, personalities, and their effects. The first one is attitudes. Psychologically, an attitude refers to a set of emotions, beliefs, and behaviors toward a particular object, person, thing, or event. There are positive and negative attitudes. Firstly, what is negative attitude? A negative attitude is a result of negative thinking. It is lack of mental discipline. It focuses on the problem and stop looking for solutions or opportunities. A negative attitude can only survive on a steady diet of negative thinking and negative self-talk. A negative attitude is a habit forming, and it has an impact on you and the people around you. A negative attitude affects you physically. A person with a negative attitude will almost always lose to a person with a positive attitude. Sadly, many people with a negative attitude are stuck in a doom loop because they have a negative attitude about improving their attitude. This is a not good place to be. What is a positive attitude? A positive attitude is the result of discipline and deliberate way of seeing, thinking, and responding to life. It is a mental discipline. It is intentional. It is a mental toughness. A positive attitude is not naive, and it does not sugarcoat problems. Rather, it sees and acknowledges problem and then focuses on finding solutions and opportunities. It looks for the opportunity within the problem. A positive attitude is a habit forming, and it has an impact on you and the people around you. A positive attitude affects you physically. A person with a positive attitude will almost always outperform a person with a negative attitude. So, attitudes give several results on a person. The first one is it results in experience. The second one is it results in upbringing. And the third one is it results in behavior of a person. There are a number of factors that can influence how and why attitudes form. Here is a closer look at how attitudes form. The first one is from experience. Attitudes form directly as a result of experience. They may emerge due to direct personal experience, or they may result from observation. The second one is social factors. Social roles and social norms can have a strong influence on attitudes. Social roles relates to how people are expected to behave in particular role or context. Social norms involve society's rule for what behaviors are considered appropriate. The third one is learning. Attitudes can be learned in a variety of ways. Consider how advertisers use classical conditioning to influence your attitude toward a particular product. In a television commercial, you see young, beautiful people having fun on a tropical beach while enjoying a sport drinks. This attractive and appealing image causes you to develop a positive association with this particular beverage. The fourth one is conditioning. Operant conditioning can also be used to influence how attitudes develop. Imagine a young man who has just started smoking. Whenever he lights up a cigarette, people complain, penalize him, and ask him to leave their area. This negative feedback from those around him eventually causes him to develop an unfavorable opinion of smoking, and he decides to give up the habit. The last one is observation. People also learn attitudes by observing people around them. When someone you admire greatly espouses a particular attitude, you are more likely to develop the same beliefs. For example, children spend a great deal of time observing the attitudes of their parents and usually begin to demonstrate similar outlooks. Why attitude change? While attitudes can have a powerful effect on behavior, they are not set in stone. The same influences that lead to attitude formation can also create attitude change. The first one is learning theory. Classical conditioning, operant conditioning, and observational learning can be used to bring about attitude change. Classical conditioning can be used to create positive emotional reactions to an object, person, or event by associating positive feelings with the target object. Operant conditioning can be used to strengthen desirable attitudes and weaken undesirable ones. People can also change their attitude after observing the behavior of others. The second one is elaboration likelihood theory. This theory is persuasion suggests that people can alter their attitudes in two ways. First, they can be motivated to listen and think about the message, thus leading to an attitude shift. Or they might be influenced by characteristic of the speaker, leading to a temporary or surface shift in attitude. Messages that are thought-provoking and that appeal to logic are more likely to lead to permanent changes in attitudes. Dissonance theory. As mentioned earlier, people can also change their attitudes when they have conflicting beliefs about a topic. In order to reduce the tension created by these incompatible beliefs, people often shift their attitudes. These are some factors that can be affected by attitudes. The first one is attitudes' effect on how you communicate with others. And the second one is it affects the tasks and responsibilities performed. The last one is it contributes to your work. The next one is perceptions. Psychologically, perception can be defined as sensory experience of the world, including how a person recognizes and interprets the sensory. The importance of perceptions is it is crucial for human survival. There are several types of perception for human. The first one is vision. The second one is taste. The third one is sound. The fourth one is touch. And lastly, smell. There are several impacts of perception. The first one is halo effect, which is the process in which individuals come into a conclusion about an individual based on only one aspect trait. This gives power to one person over all others and results in an overcast of influence. The second one is horn effect, which is the opposite of halo effect, as it takes a bad act and result in person being considered as a bad person. The third one is recency effect, which is taking the most recent information as the ultimate perception of the person, even though you have access to other information about them. And then the fourth one is primary effect, which is making an assumption about someone based on the first information that is received. This is the embodiment of the first impression and how that can determine a person's overall perception by others. And then lastly is similar to me effect. We often feel more comfortable, identify with, and have more positive perceptions of those who are similar to us. Moving on to the next one is judgment. Judgment defined as process of forming an opinion or evaluation by discerning and comparing. Ethical judgment is a moral decision made by an individual. A difficult one is context of real or hypothetical ethical dilemma. So here are some tips on how to make good judgments. The first one is know the person you are judging. Second, know the impact of the judgment. Third, focus on specific situation. And lastly, practice gratitude regularly. When evaluating a person's actions, it is crucial to know their perspective, history, and where they are coming from. If the judgment is based on values, realize if those values are absolute or relative. Even if they are violating your values, they might hold different values that cause them to perform different actions. Effect of negative judgment comes in stages, where the first stage is it harms a person's self-esteem, and then it leads to serious mental health. After that, it can weaken the immune system, and then it can lead to a serious health problem. Lastly, for personalities, it is a character patterns of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that make a person unique. Personality stems from the Latin word persona, which refers to a theatrical mask worn by performers in order to either project different roles or disguise their identities. Here are some personalities examples, such as generous, caring, perfectionist, competitive, protective, and also loyal. So there are several impacts of personality. Personality development not only makes you look good and presentable, but also helps you to face the world with a smile. Personality development goes a long way in reducing stress and conflicts. It encourages individuals to look at the brighter side of life, face even the worst situation with a smile. That's all from me. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to today's lesson where we're looking at motivation theories. Since the beginning of industrialization and the advent of factories, people have been trying to figure out what motivates employees. Now, different people who've tried to figure this out have come up with different answers, resulting in many different theories of motivation. One of the very first theories was developed by Frederick Taylor in 1911, called scientific management. And in a general sense, you can think of motivation as working as follows. Now, each of us has needs. Now, obviously, your needs will be different from my needs, but each of us is motivated by our needs to exhibit certain behaviors. And the aim of our behaviors is obviously to see if we can satisfy our needs. Now, whether our needs are satisfied or not can then cause us to change our needs. And in this way, the cycle begins again with our new needs potentially causing us to exhibit new behaviors. So for example, if you were thirsty and your thirst is satisfied, you may develop a new need of hunger and trying to satisfy your hunger. Now, as we've already said, there are many different theories of motivation. However, they can be categorized into two groups: content theories and process theories. Now, content theories look at motivation from the perspective of our needs and our aspirations. These theories then discuss motivation in terms of fulfilling these needs. So you can think of content theories as focusing on what will motivate us. Process theories, on the other hand, look at how people are motivated. They're concerned with the process by which motivation occurs and how we can adjust our processes to alter motivation levels. So you can think of process theories of motivation as focusing on how motivation occurs. So now let's jump in and give an overview of all of these theories of motivation, starting with the content theories. But hold on to your hats because I'm going to go as quick as I can. But if you'd like to dig deeper, then I've provided links so you can learn more about all of these theories. So first we have Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Now Maslow described needs in terms of a hierarchy, and the concept being that needs at the bottom of the hierarchy must be satisfied before an individual can move to the next level and seek to satisfy those needs. Now, the 5 levels are physiological needs, such as food and water; safety needs, things like being free from war, having a secure job; social needs, like having relationships and belonging to groups; esteem needs or self-esteem needs, such as receiving praise, recognition, and status; and finally, what Maslow called self-actualization needs, such as wanting to be the best we can be. Next, Herzberg's two-factor theory. Now, Herzberg argued that there are 2 factors which are essential in the motivation of employees: motivators and hygiene factors. Now, motivators encourage you to work harder if present, so for example, having an interesting job. And hygiene factors cause you to become unmotivated if they are not present, so for example, having poor working conditions or having poor pay. Next up is 3 needs theory, and this argues that each of us has 3 needs that exist on a scale. So we have the need for achievement, the need for affiliation, which means collaborating with others with the need to be part of a group, and finally the need for power. Now, managers can use the 3 needs theory to set motivational targets tailored to each of their team. Next, we have McGregor's theory X and theory Y. This says that employees fall into one of 2 categories. Theory X assumes that team members are intrinsically lazy and unmotivated and will avoid doing work if there is any opportunity to do so. So because of this, management must build systems of control and supervision. On the other hand, theory Y assumes that team members are ambitious and self-motivated. Now, a theory Y manager holds the view that if people are provided with the right conditions, then they will perform well. Now we come to ERG theory. Now, you can think of this as being a simplified version of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. In ERG theory, there are 3 needs which are also arranged as a hierarchy. So first we have existence needs. These concern your physical well-being, so having food, having water, and feeling safe. We have relatedness needs, which concern your need to relate to other people. And finally, we have your growth needs, and these refer to our personal development needs and desire to perform meaningful work. The final content theory we'll look at is Mayo's motivation theory. Now, Mayo determined that how well a group of employees perform is defined by 2 factors: norms and group cohesiveness. Now, norms meaning whether the members of the group encourage positive or negative behavior, and group cohesiveness meaning how well the group gets along with each other. Now, groups that have high cohesiveness and positive norms will be the most highly motivated and therefore the highest performing. Now, Mayo is important because he was the first to recognize that if you treat an employee well, they might be more productive for you. Now, these days that might seem like an obvious statement, but in the time of Mayo, it wasn't. So that's all the content theories covered. Let's take a look at the process theories. First up is Adams' equity theory. Now, this says that high levels of employee motivation can only be achieved when each employee perceives their treatment to be fair relative to others. So, for example, if you were paid half what your colleague earns but do precisely the same work, how would you respond? Well, this theory says that you'll adjust your inputs, that is the amount of work you do, to compensate for the perceived unfairness of receiving half the pay, the output. Next, we have Room's expectancy theory. Now, this states that a person will choose their behavior based on what they expect the result of that behavior to be. And for an employee to be motivated, 3 factors must be present. Expectancy, and that's the belief that if you put the effort in, it will be possible for you to hit your targets, meaning your targets are actually achievable. Instrumentality, and that's the belief that you will receive the reward if you actually hit your targets. And finally, valence. So you must value and want the reward that's on offer. Now, if you multiply these 3 factors together, then the higher the result, the higher the motivation. Next, we have Taylor's scientific management, and this theory can be broken down into 2 parts. First, we have a philosophy about how employees behave, and then based on that, Taylor created principles to maximize efficiency. Now, Taylor believed employees were only motivated by one thing, money. And because workers are only motivated by money, then they don't inherently enjoy work and work hard. And so because of that, employers should monitor workers very closely to ensure they are not slacking off. Next, we have the self-efficacy theory of motivation. And this is a task-specific way of thinking about motivation. The higher your self-efficacy, the greater your belief that you can perform a specific task and the more your motivation. So 4 factors combine to determine a person's self-efficacy. Your experience, so have you done similar jobs in the past? Your vicarious experience, meaning have you seen others do it successfully? Social persuasion, meaning encouragement from others will increase your self-efficacy. And finally, physiological feedback. So typically, the more at ease you are with the type of task, the higher your self-efficacy. Next up is the reinforcement theory of motivation. So according to the theory, there are 4 factors which influence motivation, and you can use these factors to encourage good behavior and discourage bad behavior. Now, the first factor is positive reinforcement, and that's a reward you give for desired behavior. Next, we have negative reinforcement, which is a reward you give by removing something negative from the environment. Next, we have punishment, and this is when you use the threat of a negative consequence to stop undesirable behavior. And finally, we have extinction, and this refers to stopping someone's learned behavior. You can extinguish a behavior by withholding the positive reinforcement that led to the behavior in the first place. The final theory is Locke's goal-setting theory. Now, this is based on the premise that if you set the right goals, then you can increase both motivation and productivity. So what are the right goals? Well, in order for a goal to be the right one, it must have clarity, so it must be clear. It must have challenge, so it must be challenging but not too challenging. It must have commitment, so you must be committed to achieving the goal. There must be feedback, meaning regular feedback boosts your commitment. And finally, task complexity is something to be aware of. A goal must not be too complicated. So in summary, motivation theories attempt to explain how to motivate employees in the workplace. Broadly speaking, theories of motivation fall into 2 categories: content theories and process theories. Now, content theories look at motivation from the perspective of our needs and aspirations, whereas process theories look at how people are motivated. So that's it for this lesson. We've covered a lot. Really hope you enjoyed it, and I'll speak to you again soon.
Hello, I'm Janellyson WIlson, and I will be presenting individual differences and relationship. Driver James defined individual differences as variations or deviations from the average of the group, with respect to the mental or physical characters occurring in the member of group are differences. In simple terms, Leadership is a management style that directs toward fulfilling an organization's overall military generals. Team coaches and department heads are examples of leaders who must engage and motivate their organizations to achieve collective goals while establishing a positive and welcoming environment. More than just managers delegating tasks or supervising a team, organizational leaders communicate the overall mission of their organization, establish a strategy to achieve that mission, and motivate their teams to fulfill their goals to the best of their abilities. Let's take a look at the organizational leadership skills that all great leaders should possess. When it comes to matters regarding an organization, there are several things that we can ponder on. These questions can be: why some people in an organization embrace change and others are fearful of it, while some employees will be productive only if they are closely supervised, while others will be productive if they are not. Why do some workers learn new tasks more effectively than others? What makes us wonder or ponder these questions we have regarding an organization? Why the term organization gives us such wonder? Isn't an organization just a simple term that does not need explanation? Well, this is because individual variations directly affect how each member of an organization feels, thinks, and behaves. People who have various perspectives on things act in different ways. Different mindsets cause people to react to instructions differently, and different personalities have different ways of interacting to superiors, coworkers, subordinates, and clients. Individual differences are the ways in which people differ from each other. Every member of an organization has its own way of behavior. It is important for managers to understand individual differences because they influence the feelings, thoughts, and behavior of employees. Every person is unique and different. This point should be highly considered when running an organization. Every people is unique simply means every individual think in different way, they work in different way. Instead of seeing this as a problem, it should be considered as an opportunity to get many ideas, to get different outcomes, and an opportunity to see things from different angles. Differences are more substantial than manageable. Most of people think it is hard to manage the different people instead of thinking how to utilize those differences in an organization. An organization will only achieve its ultimate aim if it can effectively deal with the assets, which means the employees in the organization. So, like mentioned in the above, it is important to consider the differences are more substantial rather than the thought of managing it. Individual behavior differences must be acknowledged and, where feasible, considered when managing the organization in order for organizational leadership practices to be effective. Two categories of individual differences are personality and ability. Let's move on to personality. Personality is the general description of a person or set of traits that best captures how that person behaves and engages with others. People's personalities and behaviors are expected to have predictable relationships. What is the importance of personality? Personality development not only makes you look good and presentable, but also helps you face the world with a smile. Personality development goes a long way in reducing stress and conflicts. It encourages individuals to look at the brighter sides of life, face even the worst situations with a smile. When it comes to examples of personality, the examples of personalities are perfectionist, critical, impatient, demanding, relaxed, stressed, easygoing, fun, friendly, and shy and quiet. This is the Big Five personality dimensions. Personality is the set of characteristics that underlie a relatively stable pattern of behavior in response to ideas, peoples, and objects. Traits are distinguishing personal characteristics that make up an individual's unique personality. Researchers and psychologists suggest that most personality tests have recurring themes or dimensions, known as the Big Five. The Big Five personality dimensions by Robert McCrae and Paul Costa were built upon Louis Goldberg's 5 primary personality factors. In their research, they classified traits into 5 broad dimensions: openness to experience, conscientiousness, extraversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. You can remember them by using the acronyms OCEAN or CANOE. Conscientiousness is the degree to which a person is characterized by dependability, efficiency, and purposeful action. This dimension is a good predictor of successful individual performance in the workplace. High conscientiousness is organized, likes routine and plans, disciplined, goal-oriented, thorough, methodical, detail-oriented, and can be a compulsive perfectionist. Meanwhile, medium prefers structures but can be flexible, cares about details and accuracy if he or she finds the situation important, and lastly, low, spontaneous, flexible, more relaxed, multitasker, tends to be careless, and may procrastinate. Next is extroversion, which refers to a person's comfort level with his or her environment. A person high in extroversion is usually comfortable talking with new people. He or she likes to look at the big picture and is a successful influencer. This trait is usually seen in many CEOs and entrepreneurs. Meanwhile, the opposite is extroversion, where their personality is more reserved, relaxed paced, likes to keep to themselves, quiet, and private. Meanwhile, agreeableness measures how well a person gets along with others, competitiveness, and cooperation. People who scored high in this spectrum are empathetic and work well in a team. Highly agreeable individuals may thrive in roles that may involve counseling, social work, and leadership. On the negative side, a highly agreeable person may conform to groups, perhaps to avoid disagreements and/or to fit in. A mid-scorer will likely bring up hard topics and be more assertive in situations that require decision-making. High agreeableness includes dislike confrontation, compassionate, helpful, considerate, tolerant, and selfless. Meanwhile, medium looks out for both self and others. Strategic can be assertive if she or he strongly believes in the cause. And lastly, low, which are guarded, make objective judgments, direct communication style, may be self-focused, persistent, doubtful, uncooperative, and may be combative. Next is neuroticism, where it measures a person's emotional stability. High neuroticism can lead to issues in the workplace, but just because an individual scored high in neuroticism doesn't mean they should be disregarded completely. The concern is more about the type of job that he or she will be performing. For example, a person who scored high in neuroticism may not do well working as a server in a busy restaurant, but may thrive working in a quiet, slower-paced setting such as in a library. Some people who get easily stressed handle their stress well and use it as a motivator to get their tasks accomplished. High neuroticism includes emotionally reactive, temperamental, insecure, tends to stress out easily, self-conscious, can be a perfectionist. Medium, usually able to handle and control emotions under normal stress. And low, calm, poised, relaxed, can handle stressful situations well. And last but not least is openness. It describes an individual's openness to experience. A high score of this trait is great in a fast-growing company, where there are many changes and ambiguity. The mid-scorers tend to be great, as well as they are usually open-minded but also practical and level-headed. Pay attention to the very low end of the spectrum, as individuals who scored low may be resistant to change and can hinder innovation and progress. High openness are inquisitive, creative, curious, unconventional, imaginative, likes to take on new challenges and adventures. And for medium, open to change but also appreciates tried and true methods. Lastly, for low, straightforward, prefers familiarity, may not express emotional openly, and down to earth. Nature reflects biological heritage, meanwhile nurture reflects one's life experience. Now the question is personality due mostly to nature, that is the genetic disposition with which a person is born, or is it due mostly to nurture, the circumstances in which a person is raised. As researchers dug more deeply into the nature of personality, it is certainly influenced by what happens to the people, how they are raised, what they learn, and their personal experiences. Both nature and nurture, both genetic and environmental influences play a role in the development of personality. This is the interaction of personality and situational factors. If situations can influence personality, and personality can predict behavior, then situational influences also contribute to predicting behavior. It also brings into question whether or not personality traits are consistent, since they are easily influenced by situation. Therefore, personality and situational factor will always converge towards feelings, attitude, thoughts, and behavior. Ability is the skill and qualities which make it possible to achieve a goal. It may be stable and enduring characteristics that are genetic and can be either completely perceptual or completely motor or a combination. Employees needed to have certain abilities that will make them a valuable addition to an organization. Basically, ability is what an individual is capable of doing. In this topic on ability, there are two types of abilities that affect performance. Cognitive ability is defined as a general mental capability involving reasoning, problem solving, planning, abstract thinking, complex idea and comprehension, and learning from experience. And physical ability is the capacity to do tasks that demand stamina, desire, strength, and similar characteristics. It can identify individuals who are physically able to perform the essential function of a job without risking injury to others. Nature and nurture interact to produce cognitive development. For nature, biological heritage and maturation of brain and body, ability to perceive, learn, act, motivation. As for nurture, education, experience, or practice. Adaptation, children respond to demands of environment in ways that meet their own goals. Organization, children integrate particular observations into a body of coherent knowledge. Let's move on to the next topic, which is self-awareness and developing interpersonal skills. Self-awareness is the ability to focus on yourself and how your actions, thoughts, or emotions do or don't align with your internal standards. If you are highly self-aware, you can objectively evaluate yourself, manage your emotions, align your behavior with your values, and understand correctly how others perceive you. Self-awareness is also acquiring a self-understanding that enables you to understand who you really are and the reasons behind your actions. It involves reflections, and reflection demands that you consider yourself in relation to your behavior, emotion, interactions, and thoughts. You can engage in reflection alone or with others. Examples of self-awareness are such as being able to focus on something positive when in a negative situation, being able to recognize a bad habit and effect it can have on you, learn about your emotional triggers so you can better deal with negative emotions like anger or hate. Do you think you understand yourself better than anybody else? Why do we want to know about ourselves? It is because we want to understand who we are on the inside, develop our personalities, and learn how to get along with others. Other than that is face obstacles in a more optimistic manner. And lastly, acquire more control, make better decisions, and adopt more flexible and certain strategy. When it comes to the effort of having our own self-awareness, there are various methods or ways we can determine or evaluate our self-awareness. When assessing our own self-awareness, there are three tools for self-awareness and personal development methods that is commonly practiced that we can apply, which are Johari window, SWOT analysis, and personal profiling test. What is the Johari window? The Johari window is a framework for understanding conscious and unconscious bias that can help increase self-awareness and our understanding of others. It is the creation of two psychologists, Joseph Love and Harrington Ingham, who named the model by combining their first name in 1950s. It is composed of 4 quadrants in which people using the framework can identify what they know about themselves and what other people know about them. So let's watch a video on how to do personality test based on Johari window and get to know our personality.
We're going to look at the Johari window. We'll describe how the model works and talk about ways that you can use it to increase your self-awareness and your relationship with others and how you work in groups. And I will be using myself as a running example. I'm Aszreeyn, and each week I post videos to help you with your leadership and professional development. And this model has been around for decades, and it's in most college textbooks that deal with interpersonal communication and related areas of relationship development. So where does this name Johari come from? Well, the creators, Joseph Luft and Harrington Ingram, took the first letters of their names and combined them to make the name of the model. So that little spark of creativity makes me already like this model. And it provides a way to increase our self-awareness, self-perception. And I mainly like the Johari window because it can inspire us to be more authentic, more genuine, and more open, and that will help us form deeper connections. It's a 2x2 model that gives us 4 squares. Some people call them windows, like the name of the model, which is a nice metaphor because these are windows into what makes you tick. On the x-axis, we have what we know about ourselves and don't know about ourselves. And on the y-axis, we have what's known to others and not known to others about us. And that gives us 4 squares. They're each different sizes depending upon the individual, and it all depends on how well you know yourself and how well others know you. So let's start with the most obvious window. This represents everything we know about ourselves and everything that others know about us. This window is called the open area or arena. Some people describe this as the I know, you know window. There are no secrets here. For example, everybody who knows me, even for a little while, sees that I'm outgoing, I'm quick to laugh, I'm very willing to engage in conversations and talk about almost all areas of my life. I usually have a positive attitude. I'm a teacher, a Christian, and I care about my family. I'm aware of all of this and I'm willing to communicate it openly. So a question for you, what would you put in this square for yourself? What parts of your personality are out there in the open? You might want to pause and take an inventory of what's in this window for you. The second window is called the hidden area. This is sometimes called the facade window or the masked window. The phrase that describes this window is, I know, but you don't. We're keeping information here private or under wraps, like your fears or other issues. Maybe you have something from your past that you'd rather not talk about. It could be that you're not sharing personal information like your hopes or dreams. Maybe what you really want to do, for example, is be an artist, but you keep that information to yourself. You keep it hidden because you don't want to be criticized. The key, though, is that you know what these various positives and negatives are, even if you're not talking about them openly with others. This can obviously change over time. So as you make some of this information more known to others, then it becomes open. So once you talk about it, once it's known to others, that open box will expand. So for me, years ago, I had an anxiety issue and I finally realized it because even when everything seemed great on the surface, I still felt this vibration of anxiety and discomfort that never really went away. And after realizing this, it became known to me, but I didn't tell anybody except for my wife and I think maybe my brother. But when I did tell them, and then especially when I told others, it became known to others and it went into that open window. That square grew. And by the way, I'm doing 95% better with anxiety since I began talking about it and getting help with it. And that's why I love this model. It can inspire us to be authentic, and that can lead to growth and deeper relationships. So question for you, what was something that was once hidden in that square, but now you talk about it openly? Now, the third window is called the blind area or blind spot. That name may sound politically incorrect to some people, but that's what they called it when they made the model decades ago. The phrase that describes this window is, I don't know, but you do. So here, we may not realize certain things about ourselves, but others know this about us. So information in this square could be positive or negative. Have you ever, for example, met somebody who is really self-centered? Well, you may know that about them, but they may not realize it about themselves. So for me, the key purpose of this square is that you can use it to figure out what other people think to help you grow. So your friends, for example, can help you mature if you're open to feedback about what they see in you. Years ago, I lived in California where I went to grad school for a couple of years. And my new friends quickly noticed that I had this East Coast edge. I was a bit snappy, I had a short temper, but I did not realize this about myself. I grew up on the East Coast, and that way of talking just seemed normal and familiar to me. But my friends in California saw this about me, and they pointed it out nicely. They said, man, why are you so uptight, so tense? You should just relax a little. And they used to laugh at how stereotypical I was coming from the East Coast. And by the way, this was extremely helpful for me in the long run. They helped me laugh at myself, and I started to become more well-rounded and more aware about how I came across. And so the information in this window could be entirely positive as well. Like I didn't realize that I was really good at following through and completing projects compared to other people until somebody pointed out to me. And then I now count it as one of my strengths. It's something that I can feel good about and know that I can do well. So a question for you, have you ever realized something about yourself because somebody pointed it out to you? And the fourth square is the unknown. And the phrase for this is, I don't know, you don't know. And this information about ourselves, nobody knows, at least not yet. So the question is, how do we know this square even exists? Well, we know this information is there waiting to be discovered because in the past, when we have had new experiences, we have learned more about who we are that we previously did not know. So there was a point, if you had asked me, do you like sushi? I would have replied, I don't know. I've never tried it. So it turns out I love sushi. And that was once unknown to me and unknown to others, but it's squarely now in the open box. I like octopus, squid, eel, and that's a really simple example, but new experiences teach me things about myself I didn't know and that nobody else knew about me. When I got married, had a son, became a supervisor at work, these new experiences revealed both positive and negative aspects that nobody knew yet. So question for you, have you ever had a new experience that taught you something about yourself that was new? This shows that there are still undiscovered parts of who we are. Maybe that this will inspire you to get out of your comfort zone and try something new. So question of the day, how could you use the Johari window to help you increase your self-awareness and self-perception? Take some time and use this model as a way to get to know yourself better. Before we go, I made 2 related videos that I would like to recommend that will help you keep moving along this same trajectory. The first is a video on how to improve your self-awareness in relationships and all about getting along with others. And the second is how to increase your self-awareness as a leader. Each video will help you dig deeper into parts of yourself that you may not know very well yet. I will put links to those in the description below the video, and also they may be popping up here on the screen somewhere. So thanks, God bless, and I will see you in the next video.
In this slide, it shows a graphical explanation on how the Johari window works. So these are 4 panes of Johari window, which consists of open self, information about you that both you and others know, blind self, information about you that you are not aware of but others are aware, hidden self, the information about you that only you know but no other people, and unknown self, the information about you that neither you nor other knows about. Basically, these 4 panes comes and covers the variety of possibilities on how much you and other people know about yourself. Moving on to the SWOT analysis. So what is SWOT analysis? SWOT stands for strengths. What do you do well in? What unique resource can you draw on? And what do others see as your strength? Next is weakness. What can you improve? What resources that you lack compared to other people? And what are others likely see as your weakness? Opportunities. What opportunities are open to you? What trends could you take advantage of? And how can you turn your strength into an opportunity? And finally, threat. What threat can harm you? What is your competition up to? And what threat do your weakness expose you to? Strengths and weaknesses are internal to your company, things that you have some control over and can change. Examples include who is on your team, your patents and intellectual property, and your location. The third self-awareness that can be applied to assess is the personality profiling test. Personality profiling is a scientific method of determining human personality characteristics and establishes person job fit across the talent management life cycle. The personality assessment establishes a candidate's strengths and potential weaknesses, key work style, and motivation. The purpose of personality assessments is to learn more about a person's temperament, character traits, decision-making processes, communication preferences, and general behavior and attitude toward life, work, education, recreation, and other people. The purpose of the personality profiling test is also to provide the knowledge that enables us to understand why we think, feel, and act in the ways that we do, as well as why different people may react in such distinct ways to the same situation. Basically, the test also provides a justification on why we are as we are. It gives us explanation behind our attitude on things and the things we do in response to the task that we are in hand. So, in the discovery of personality profiling test, it was first discovered by a Greek physician, Hippocrates, around 400 BC. The four temperaments describe individuals as sanguine, optimistic, social, and associated with the element of air, melancholic, analytical, quiet, associated with the element of earth, choleric, short-tempered, irritable, associated with the element of fire, and phlegmatic, relaxed, peaceful, associated with the element of water. These are the explanations given by Buckingham in the year 2002 on the four temperaments that are associated with the personality profiling test. However, there are other explanations on four temperaments that are associated with the personality profiling test that slightly differ to Buckingham explanation. The four temperaments are also represented by sanguine, the popular personality, melancholy, the perfect personality, choleric, the powerful personality. Buckingham explanation may give away a negative point of view on choleric as it relates the temperament to negative attitude, such as short-tempered associate with the destructive element of fire, and phlegmatic, the peaceful personality. From the personality profiling test, the assessed person will be given a set of choices, and the person is required to make multiple choices. And from the choices made by the assessed person, the number of times or the frequency on the choice made on A, B, C, or D is determined and calculated in percentages. The equation of figure below provides a gist of how the percentage is calculated, based on the frequency of choosing either A, B, C, or D. Based on the four temperaments, we know that most people will not have the same results when multiple people take the same personality profiling test. This is because there is no right or wrong answer for the test, as it is just to assess which trait a person personally chooses the most. While the most persons are composite of many traits, they do show a predominance of one of them. Florence Littore created the Personality Plus test, a personality evaluation system based on Hippocrates' four temperaments. Other personality assessments have been created, such as those by Meyer-Briggs, Hugan, and Kiersey-Bates.
Next subtopic is building and leading groups and teams, teams behaviors, effectiveness and performance, managing conflicts, and managing change. A team is defined as a group of people who work together to accomplish something beyond their individual self-interest. However, not all groups are teams. According to John R. Katzenbach and Douglas K. Smith, in their book The Wisdom of Teams, Creating the High-Performance Organization, a team is a small number of people with complementary skills who are committed in a common purpose, performance goals, and approach for which they hold themselves mutually accountable. Hence, an efficient high-performance team requires the following: a deep sense of purpose and commitment to the team members and to the mission, relatively more ambitious performance goals than average teams, mutual accountability, and a clear understanding of members' responsibilities to the team and individual obligations, a diverse range of expertise that complements other team members' abilities, and last, interdependence and trust between members. Next is team effectiveness. Team effectiveness focuses on team excellence or desired outcome of teamwork. Two critical functions of team effectiveness are performance, which is task accomplishment, and development, which is team maintenance. Team performance is the degree to which a team is able to satisfy its output goals, such as quality, functionality, and reliability of outputs, the expectations of its members, and its cost and time targets. Meanwhile, development refers to the cohesiveness of the team and the ability of team members to satisfy their own needs while working effectively with other team members. It is helpful if team members understand the conditions that contribute to team excellence. So, let us take a look at the condition of effective teams. The first condition of effective teams is clear, elevating goals. A compelling purpose energizes team members, orients them toward their collective objective, and fully engages their talents. Next is result-driven structure. Teams need to find the best structure for accomplishing their goals. Structural features that lead to effective teamwork include task design, team composition, and core norms of conduct. Next is competent team members. Teams should be composed of the right number and mix of members to accomplish all the tasks of the team. In addition, members need sufficient information, education, and training to become or remain competent. Next condition is unified commitment. A common mistake is to call a work group a team, but treat it as a collection of individuals. Next is collaborative climate. The ability of a team to collaborate or work well together is essential to team effectiveness. Then, standard of excellence. Clear norms of conduct, which is how we should behave, are important for team functioning. Moving on, the next condition of effective team is the external support and recognition. A supportive organizational context includes material resources, rewards for excellent performance, an educational system to develop necessary team skills, and an information system to provide data needed to accomplish the task. Next is principled leadership. Effective team leadership has been found to consistently relate to team effectiveness. Effective team leaders are committed to the team's goals and give members autonomy to unleash their talents when possible. The leadership of the team can use these 8 characteristics of team excellence that are presented to assess the health of the team and to take appropriate action to address any weaknesses. Next, we move on to managing conflict and managing change. So, what is conflict? According to a former American football player and a motivational speaker, Ty Howard, a part of effective leadership is caring for and supporting one another, even when there is conflict or a difference in opinion. Conflict is a process whereby one side perceives that self-interests are adversely influenced by another party's actions. Conflict occurs when a party believes that the other's activities have a negative impact on their own self-interest. Conflict may occur between people or within groups, in all kinds of situations. Due to the wide range of differences among people, the lack of conflict may signal the absence of effective interaction. Conflict should not be considered good or bad. Rather, it may be viewed as a necessity to help build meaningful relationships between people and groups. Next is conflict management. As a leader, conflict management is essential in order to maintain a healthy and effective team. When a situation gets out of hand, you may need to step in as a direct facilitator with a targeted approach to resolving team conflict. Make sure that team members understand basic conflict resolution skills. Then, follow these 5 steps that I'm going to present, adapted from the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development CIPD framework. The first step to manage conflict as a leader is to speak to team members individually. Avoid making assumptions and let people open up their own time. Reassure the employees that the discussion is confidential and ask each party the same question to remain impartial. The second step is to bring people together. Moderate to keep the tone of the conversation calm and non-threatening. Encourage active listening so people really understand where the other person is coming from. Encourage individuals to share ideas. Encourage them to brainstorm some solutions. Ask them about situations where they have worked well together in the past. See if they can build on those positive experiences. The next step is asking wider teams for ideas. Talking things out helps you and your team to consider different assumptions, beliefs, and decision-making approaches. Next is to draw up a plan. Ask the parties to detail agreed on actions for reconciliation and get each to commit to this strategy. The last step is to follow up. Ensure that issues have been resolved properly by following up on the situation. Next up is change management. Change is constantly happening on a team and in business. Whether it's new leadership, a reorganization, a merger or acquisition, successfully leading a team through change is hard and it presents both opportunities and challenges. To maximize benefit and minimize stress, leaders need to be organized, strategic, and almost overly prepared. The best organizations succeed because leaders steer coordination across teams, maximizing the talent and versatility of various players. Well-positioned teams weather change together, evolving collectively. There are 8 steps to manage change as a leader. So, let us take a look at the change management steps. The first step is to assess organizational design. The leadership group must be prepared to carry out the transformational full body workout. Conducting an audit in advance of an organizational change is a smart move to make sure everyone involved has the information, experience, and abilities necessary to guide the business into the future. Challenges associated with change tend to unearth weakness in leadership and on teams. It's better to own, evaluate, and strengthen those during the planning phase. Next is activate change management. When not managed correctly, change can disrupt culture, impeding innovation and efficiency. Communication is key. A systematic and scalable effort can help people to accept change. Spalding once said, having an organization with defined values that communicates with transparency will help to build a growth mindset that builds adaptable employees. Organization transformation is difficult work and should be undertaken from a systems thinking approach with commitment to getting it right, or at least with empathy and respect for everyone that will be impacted. Moving on to the next step of change management is to set the direction. By setting priorities up front at each level, leaders set their teams up for success. Create a vision that the team can support. Listen to their worries. Give them specific directions to enable them to produce results. Setting up metrics to track the team's performance can be beneficial. While disruption is unavoidable, it must be kept below acceptable limits to avoid harming morale and output. Keep a list of your top priorities. It can be difficult to remember them in a constantly changing workplace. The next step is to engage your team. Again, this situation doesn't call for a hero, so being focused and prepared places leaders to assist their team flex their way through changes. A knowledgeable and prepared facilitator is required. Position the team to succeed, then afford them the autonomy to do so. There's a quote by Steve Jobs saying that it doesn't make sense to hire smart people and then tell them what to do. We hire smart people so they can tell us what to do. Next is to empower decision making. Be clear and transparent. Discuss the objectives and justifications for decisions. Also, get opinions and invite discussions. Utilizing collective wisdom can aid in problem solving. So, if the change causes work to be disrupted, it can be demotivating. So, try to keep things moving. Another change management step is to leverage talent. A continuous process called career planning connects one's present employment to future opportunities. Create succession plans to assist the team in achieving its objectives. Develop potential by coordinating professional aspirations with current or upcoming possibilities. As a team leader, one of the ways to manage change in a team is to keep the team moving forward. Leaders need to overextend their EQ. Make sure the appropriate individuals address the appropriate problems without taking up too much of everyone's time. Simplify complex issues and avoid discussing them after the talk, such as no back-channeling, gossip, or negative behaviors. Encourage individuals with various styles and aid in developing their talent and engagement. Spalding again once said, people need to hear the why several times, and if work processes or roles are changing, make sure that you have a change plan that recognizes those changes and helps people to navigate them. Lastly is to share success. Make it plain to your team members that they are essential to the transformation success. Both you and they possess this. The health of your company depends on how happy your employees are to work there. Now, let's move on to the next topic, which is leaders in history. For this topic, let me show you a video regarding the history of leadership. So, enjoy the video. Thank you.
The prominent position of leaders in society has made them a topic of study for centuries. Plato addressed the question and considered that leaders should be taken from the ruling class of Athens and specifically educated to lead. Taking personal responsibility for the common good and putting this priority over issues such as honesty with the populace. Plato made a distinction between ruling by law and the art of ruling by persuasion. Between 1469 and 1527, these views were further developed and arguably modified by Machiavelli, who agreed that leadership could be taught. His book The Prince, written in 1532, is an instruction manual on political leadership and the use and retention of power. His discussions of the use of fear and love parallel Plato's law and persuasion. He advised that leaders seek to appear to govern virtuously, but in reality act on expediency. They should be seen to be merciful, faithful, humane, frank and religious, but not actually be these things. He deals with the issues of generosity versus meanness, honesty versus reputation, and cruelty versus kindness, with a similar expedient rather than principled approach. Most famous is his belief that within certain limits it is better to be feared than loved, because, as he put it, men worry less about doing an injury to one who makes himself loved than to one who makes himself feared. Machiavelli's ideas have been widely applied to leadership in general. His target audience was medieval Italian princes. The system in which they operated meant that they predominantly used one style of leadership, which we now call autocratic. 500 years after it was written, The Prince remains one of the most controversial and widely read books on leadership. In the 19th century, studies on leadership sought personal characteristics or traits that were common to effective leaders. This led to the trait theories of Thomas Carlyle and Francis Galton. Carlyle assessed the traits of great historical figures, while Galton, in his 1869 book Hereditary Genius, studied the leadership skills of the blood relatives of powerful individuals. Galton found their decline from first-degree to second-degree relationships and concluded that leadership skills were inherited rather than learned. He reached this conclusion for most of the areas he studied, which led to his support for eugenics. This theory of inherited traits was accepted for many years and related to traits such as intelligence, morality, self-confidence, adaptability, and persistence. It was highly influential in the development of psychology in England and indirectly in areas such as education policy. Machiavelli aside, most models remain trait-based and descriptive, making little attempt to offer instruction on how to lead. By the middle of the 20th century, trait theory faced severe criticism on the grounds that people who are good leaders in one situation are not necessarily good in another. So, effectiveness must depend on some interaction between leaders and their environment. From the 1950s to the 1970s, this led to a backlash against trait theory. Improved methods of research and statistical analysis led to a more flexible idea that both the situation a leader finds themselves in and their personality traits are predictive of their performance. Leadership style is an alternative way of classifying leaders to their traits and situations. Styles refer to behaviour patterns such as autocratic or conciliatory, where traits refer to tendencies such as empathic or objective. The classic experiments on leadership style were by Kurt Lewin, who was a prominent applied psychologist in the mid-20th century, best known for coining the term action research. He is also well known for Lewin's equation, which stated that behaviour is a function of a person in their immediate environment. In 1939, he published the results of his leadership experiments. In one leadership study, Lewin identified several groups of 10-year-old boys from various boys' clubs and gave them tasks of interest such as making masks, model aeroplanes, and soap carving. Each group had an adult leader and was professionally observed over a period of 3 months. The leaders presented a series of different leadership styles, so their effect on the groups could be compared. These experiments were to compare democratic and autocratic styles, and Lewin was particularly interested in their effects on the aggression expressed by the boys in each group. Democratic leaders planned the whole process in outline at the first meeting. They gave alternatives from which the group could choose, rather than dictating. They posted objective feedback and acted as group members without doing too much of the work. The laissez-faire group was simply included as a control and was intended to represent minimum leadership. The results showed that overt aggression was 8 times greater between boys in the autocratic group than in the democratic group. Within the authoritarian group, a frequently absent leader led to little aggression with the leader present, but once the leader left the room, aggression levels increased 10-fold. None of the aggression was directed towards the leader. The boys' reaction to the leader involved submission or attention-seeking. In 2 cases, the general inter-member aggression condensed into aggression against an individual boy. In both cases, the boys left the experiment, and in both cases, the leader saw these victims as natural group leaders. A further result was that egocentric behaviour occurred twice as much in the autocratic group than in the democratic group. Later experiments suggest that groups that are under stress perform better with authoritarian leadership, while groups that are not under stress are more productive when under democratic leadership. Autocratic leadership is at its best when the team members are under stress and the leader's judgment and decision-making is the best in the group. This occurs when the leader has extensive direct experience of the tasks and situation of the group members. In Lewin's experiments, which gave a clear endorsement of democratic leadership, the leaders were all adults and the group members were all boys, meaning that if a leader has greater seniority, experience and knowledge than their team, this does not alone imply that an autocratic style is the best style. Autocratic leadership is at its worst in situations where a leader lacks direct experience of the frontline tasks of their team and lacks the intelligence to recognise their own limitations. Democratic leadership is at its best under relatively low stress conditions and with complex tasks, particularly if those tasks require the cooperation of a number of people working in different specialist areas. In such situations, the leader is not likely to have detailed knowledge of each person's speciality. However, they do not need this if their democratic leadership skills are good. The widespread success of the democratic leadership style means that people with these skills tend to do well wherever they are. Democratic leadership is at its worst in high-stress situations with inexperienced teams, but with leaders experienced in all aspects of the team's task. The basic styles in Lewin's experiments and their associated group performances have been repeatedly confirmed in other experiments. The passive, laissez-faire style has been treated as an actual style rather than just a control group as was originally intended. Other styles have also been added, including narcissistic and toxic. Lewin's democratic and autocratic styles have been developed into theories of situational leadership through which individuals adapt their styles to suit the situation.
Hello, my name is Immanuel David, and I'll be explaining on the rise of leadership. So, an example of a leader is Noman Ali Khan. He is a professor of Arabic at Nassau Community College. He shows his leadership qualities by giving talks across the world on issues related to learning Arabic and tafsir to comprehend the Quran. He was included among the 500 most Muslims throughout the world who are influential Jordan Strategic Study Center. So moving on to the next example of a leader is Dr. Tariq Al-Suwaidan. Who is he? He received early training in the traditional Islamic sciences before moving to the United States at the age of 17 to live and study there for the next 20 years. He graduated from high school there and went to earn a Bachelor of Science in Petroleum and Natural Gas Engineering from Penn State University in 1975, as well as Master in Science and PhD in Petroleum Engineering from the University of Tulsa in 1990. From the two leaders that were given as examples, what do these leaders have in common? Well, both had knew the importance of education. Without education, one cannot lead, as without knowledge, it is difficult to gain trust and influence from the people that we are leading. They also have objectives or targets that drives them to succeed. They are driven by objectives, which is what led them to furthering their studies. With education, they are able to gain followers and students to share and spread knowledge that can change the world. On the next slide, we talk about leadership's knowledge, attitude, and skills. The term leadership often used for a person who leads. So what is leadership actually? For many years, academics have debated this issue and have written extensively about the nature of leadership. But the definition of leadership is the skill of inspiring a group of individuals to take actions in pursuit of a common objective is known as leadership. So speaking of leadership, there are multiple ways of conceptualizing leadership. So in this slide, I will explain three of them, which are leadership as the group processes, leadership from a personality perspective, a great man's theory, and leadership as an act or behavior. So I'll first explain on the leadership as a group processes. It is a group's activity or transformation that are being driven by the leader in the center. The next one is leadership from a personality perspective. It is a leadership that is a combination of special traits or characteristics that one or some individual possess. Next is leadership as an act of behavior. This can be seen from actions taken by the leaders to affect or provide great change in a group. Now, speaking of leadership, there can be several or multiple perspectives or viewpoints on what leadership is. For in this slide, I will explain threat versus process type of leadership. The first one would be the traits perspective. This refers to a certain individual that has special innate or inborn characteristic or qualities which are such as unique physical factors like height. It could be personality features such as being energetic or charismatic. The trait viewpoint suggests that this kind of leadership resides in only selected people. Next is the process viewpoint. Leadership is a phenomenon that resides in the context of interaction between leaders and followers. It basically means the interaction or relationship between a leader and followers. And leadership can be observed in leaders' behavior, which can be adapted or learned by the followers. In the previous slide, I have explained the trait versus process leadership. So in this slide, I will explain on the assigned versus emergent leadership. So what is assigned leadership? Assigned leadership is a leadership based on occupying a position within an organization. This position in an organization can refer to being team leaders, plant managers, department heads, or directors. Next will be the emergent. An emergent leadership is an individual perceived by others as the most influential member of a group or an organization, regardless of the individual's title. This emerges over time through a communication behavior. It can be related to verbal involvement, like being informed, seeking others' opinion, or initiating new ideas in a group or in an organization. So, moving on to leadership and power. What is power? Power is part of the influence process. Power is also the capacity or potential to influence. People have power when they have the ability to affect others' beliefs, attitudes, and courses of actions. For example, like the leader of a country or a leader of a religious group, which they are able to affect others' belief and attitude in their life. In 1995, French and Raven have identified 5 common and important bases of power. These 5 bases of power refers to being referent, expert, legitimate, reward, and coercive. So, from the 5 bases and importance of power, we can come up with ways of conceptualizing leadership. First, I'll be explaining on referent power. Referent power refers to, or it is depending on how closely the followers connect with a leader. As an example, a valued educator has referent power over the students that they have taught. So when a student wants to look for a job, the ex-educator of the student has the referent power as they know best of their student's weakness and strength. Next will be expert power, depending on how the leader's competency is viewed by the followers. For example, a professor with competence in a certain research community has influence. So basically, when someone has knowledge or certification on certain knowledge, they have influence as their competency is documented on their certificate. The third one is legitimate power, correlated with having official employment power or rank. For example, a judge who convicts someone in the courtroom, for instance, is exercising legal authority. So the fourth and fifth ways of conceptualizing leadership are reward power and coercive power. Reward power comes from the ability to give others reward. As an example, a manager who compensates worker for the effort is applying the reward power. So basically, by giving their workers rewards, the manager can gain influence and as well as increase the motivation of their workers. The fifth one will be coercive power, deriving from the power to punish or penalize others. As an example, picture a coach who dismisses players from his squad because of an attitude issue. By showing dominance over his players, a coach is practicing coercive power. In practicing leadership and power, there are 2 major types of power in an organization. It could be position power or personal power. In an organization, there are 2 major types of power, which is position power and personal power. What differentiates these 2 powers? Position power derives from a rank in an organization system. It includes legitimate, reward, and coercive power, while personal power is the influence capacity of a leader derived from being seen by followers as likable or knowledgeable. This includes the referent and expert power. So basically, these 2 types of power in an organization, they practice the five base and importance of power that has been mentioned in the previous slides. In this section, we will understand more on leadership and management. We will understand the similarities between leadership and management, the differences between leadership and management, as well as the process involved in leadership and management. So, in the topic of leadership management, we will start with the similarities. What does these 2, leadership and management, have in common? They both involve influence. It entails working with other people. It is also concerned with effective goal accomplishment. Now that we have understand the similarities between leadership and management, we will move on to the differences between these two. So in leadership, it advocates change and new approaches. It is also concerned with understanding people's belief and gaining their commitment. In leadership, it copes with change, while in management, it advocates stability and status quo. It carries out responsibilities, exercises authority, and worry about things getting accomplished. It is coping with complexity, as it is not as flexible as the leadership. Now that we have understood the similarity as well as the differences in leadership in management, now we move on to the processes involved. So in leadership process involve developing a vision for the organization, like setting goals or objectives. Leadership also aligns people with the vision through communication, which means that communication is key. Leadership also involves motivating people to action through empowerment and through basic needs fulfillment. This helps motivates the group or the organization under the leader. So basically, leadership process creates uncertainty and change in the organization. What about management? Management process involve planning and budgeting, organizing and staffing, control and problem solving. So basically, management, it is a more systematic method, as the management process reduces uncertainty and stabilizes the organization due to the systematic method. In 1990, John Cotter once said, "Leadership and management are two distinct yet complementary systems of action in an organization." In leadership and management, for it to be effective, organizations need to nourish both competent management and skilled leadership. As we know, not everyone can be a leader. A leader requires specific criteria for them to be competent or capable leaders. So what are the characteristics in leadership? So there are 4 leadership characteristics, which are being sincere, trustworthy, truthful, as well as being just. From all my explanations of what leadership is, we now understand that not everyone can be a leader, and not every leader has leadership skills. So what does it take to be a leader? Miss Rosalind Torres might just have the answer.
What makes a great leader today? Many of us carry this image of this all-knowing superhero who stands and commands and protects his followers. But that's kind of an image from another time. And what's also outdated are the leadership development programs that are based on success models for a world that was, not a world that is or that is coming. We conducted a study of 4,000 companies, and we asked them, let's see the effectiveness of your leadership development programs. 58% of the companies cited significant talent gaps for critical leadership roles. That means that despite corporate training programs, off-sites, assessments, coaching, all of these things, more than half of the companies had failed to grow enough great leaders. You may be asking yourself, is my company helping me to prepare to be a great 21st century leader? The odds are probably not. Now, I've spent 25 years of my professional life observing what makes great leaders. I've worked inside Fortune 500 companies, I've advised over 200 CEOs, and I've cultivated more leadership pipelines than you can imagine. But a few years ago, I noticed a disturbing trend in leadership preparation. I noticed that despite all the efforts, there were familiar stories that kept resurfacing about individuals. One story was about Chris, a high-potential superstar leader who moves to a new unit and fails, destroying unrecoverable value. And then there were stories like Sydney, the CEO, who's so frustrated because her company is cited as best company for leaders, but only one of the top 50 leaders is equipped to lead their crucial initiatives. And then there were stories like the senior leadership team of a once thriving business that, surprised by a market shift, finds itself having to force the company to reduce its size in half or go out of business. Now, these recurring stories cause me to ask two questions. Why are the leadership gaps widening when there's so much more investment in leadership development? And what are the great leaders doing distinctly different to thrive and grow? One of the things that I did is I was so consumed by these questions and also frustrated by those stories that I left my job so that I could study this full time. And I took a year to travel to different parts of the world to learn about effective and ineffective leadership practices in companies, countries, and nonprofit organizations. And so I did things like travel to South Africa, where I had an opportunity to understand how Nelson Mandela was ahead of his time in anticipating and navigating his political, social, and economic context. I also met a number of nonprofit leaders who, despite very limited financial resources, were making a huge impact in the world, often bringing together seeming adversaries. And I spent countless hours in presidential libraries trying to understand how the environment had shaped the leaders, the moves that they made, and then the impact of those moves beyond their tenure. And then when I returned to work full-time in this role, I joined with wonderful colleagues who were also interested in these questions. Now, from all this, I distilled the characteristics of leaders who are thriving and what they do differently, and then I also distilled the preparation practices that enable people to grow to their potential. I want to share some of this with you now. In a 21st century world, which is more global, digitally enabled and transparent, with faster speeds of information flow and innovation, and where nothing big gets done without some kind of a complex matrix, relying on traditional development practices will stunt your growth as a leader. In fact, traditional assessments like narrow 360 surveys or outdated performance criteria will give you false positives, lulling you into thinking that you are more prepared than you really are. Leadership in the 21st century is defined and evidenced by three questions. Where are you looking to anticipate the next change to your business model or your life? The answer to this question is on your calendar. Who are you spending time with? On what topics? Where are you traveling? What are you reading? And then how are you distilling this into understanding potential discontinuities? And then making a decision to do something right now so that you're prepared and ready. There's a leadership team that does a practice where they bring together each member collecting, here are trends that impact me, here are trends that impact another team member, and they share these and then make decisions to course correct a strategy or to anticipate a new move. Great leaders are not head down, they see around corners, shaping their future, not just reacting to it. The second question is, what is the diversity measure of your personal and professional stakeholder network? You know, we hear often about good old boy networks, and you know, they're certainly alive and well, many institutions. But to some extent, we all have a network of people that we're comfortable with. So this question is about your capacity to develop relationships with people that are very different than you. And those differences can be biological, physical, functional, political, cultural, socioeconomic. And yet, despite all these differences, they connect with you and they trust you enough to cooperate with you in achieving a shared goal. Great leaders understand that having a more diverse network is a source of pattern identification at greater levels and also of solutions, because you have people that are thinking differently than you are. The third question, are you courageous enough to abandon a practice that has made you successful in the past? There's an expression, go along to get along. But if you follow this advice, chances are, as a leader, you're going to keep doing what's familiar and comfortable. Great leaders dare to be different. They don't just talk about risk-taking, they actually do it. And one of the leaders shared with me the fact that the most impactful development comes when you are able to build the emotional stamina to withstand people telling you that your new idea is naive or reckless or just plain stupid. Now, interestingly, the people that will join you are not in your usual suspects in your network. They're often people that think differently and therefore are willing to join you in taking a courageous leap. And it's a leap, not a step. More than traditional leadership programs, answering these three questions will determine your effectiveness as a 21st century leader. So what makes a great leader in the 21st century? I've met many, and they stand out. They are women and men who are preparing themselves, not for the comfortable predictability of yesterday, but also for the realities of today and all of those unknown possibilities of tomorrow. Thank you.
From the TED Talk given by Ms. Torres, it leaves us with questions. What can we ponder from the video? Sometimes we can wonder, are you creating your own future? Can you connect with individuals who disagree with you? Can you listen to many or multiple ideas? Do you have the courage to attempt something new? It is not simple. We need to take on new challenges in life and do something different. If we do so, we can or may be a greater leader with leadership skills. Based on the video, the quality or the characteristic of a leader was explained by Ms. Torres. So what is a great leader? What does it take to be a great leader? So based on Ms. Torres, a great leader is someone who is aware of current trends and utilizes them into their job and practice them in their job to strengthen relationship with their team. They are not the ones who are head down. They connect with you, trust you, and cooperate with you to reach your common goal. That type of leader are also emotionally and psychologically secure enough to abandon traditions in order to develop. They also recognize that having more diverse network in their team will aid in achieving higher level of knowledge since it creates more diverse thinking. So a leader needs to be open-minded so they can grow and improve in being a leader. So from what we have learned about what leadership is, a leader cannot be a person that does not have goals in their life. A leader should be the one leading people, not only leading, they need to lead others towards a certain goal, a goal that they will have to accomplish together. So we need to remember, an inspiring leader is a person who can direct and motivate people to seize and galvanize negative feedbacks as positive. This results in increased awareness and resilience to responses resilient responses to all sorts of criticism. When we lead people, we sometimes we are not able to make every party happy. So we need to accept the good as well as the bad criticism. By practicing optimism, when being a leader, we can help or improve our leadership skills, because the good and bad things that comes with being a leader are the things that help a leader grow. Thank you for listening.